Alrighty, hello, welcome to another edition of Magus Talk. Once again, we got Jay, who is the star of the show, the real star of the show, as he's going through an esoteric process, a pathworking, an alchemy, that has to do with a modified form of Solomonic magic, the summoning of Jinn, and in this case, angels, combined. So, as you had seen from last time, and Jay will explain himself, we orient these things in terms of the Ring of Solomon, which in this system is the ring around the body that connects to the cardinal points, east, west, north, and south. And these cardinal points extend to a whole quarter of the circle. So we are dealing with Jinn stationed along the arc of the southeast, the southwest, the northwest, and the northeast. The southeast begins at east, the southwest begins at south, the northwest begins at west, and the northeast begins at north. So we're still at the cardinal points right now, and he just finished the western part. So he's done the east-west axis, and you'll see that this has started to result in benefits. So for those of you who are like, why are we even doing this? Well, you can see benefits, but the benefits are not effortful. They're not effortless either, but they're weaved into the life you lead. So if you need things in your life will lead them to a point where you will get them. And Jay talks about this in terms of gifts. So I'm going to keep this simple, meaning that I'm going to say a few things, and Jay is going to give his 20-minute account, and then I'm going to clarify some of the stuff that Jay talked about because he makes a few pronunciation errors and he asks a few questions, but I'm going to do this after. So I'll let his whole monologue go through and then just explain a few things, and I will do it briefly. And I want to keep things simple as far as the structure of the presentation is concerned, because I have a video coming out that's not really a video. I'm not showing my face, as it were, but it's like a slideshow presentation, and this is in my yoga series on YouTube. And this video is about a certain method that's not an official one. I've designed it myself, and I've been working with it, and it works very well, but for the purposes of the video, I had to simplify it, kind of modify it, break it down, because the way I use it, it's more intuitive. But it took a long time. I don't even know when the last time I put a video up was. So I'm going to go into a simpler mode because I read that, if you want people to watch the thing and not be thrown out of the algorithm, you need to be consistent. And I've been struggling with that a little bit because I have all these other things. And monetization is not an incentive because, these aren't monetized, of course. But I'd like to encourage you guys to look at that video if you're interested in any kind of practice that has to do with yoga or meditation or getting into meditation proper, because I noticed that people, they mistake concentration for meditation. They are mindful, they do mindfulness practices and call it meditation, whereas meditation is concentrating on something specific, which is your own consciousness, which is your I am presence. And that is a skill that is not easy because that's a very abstract perception, you might say. And this trains the senses, and it has to do a little bit, it borrows from the fusion alchemy that Jay practices, and I practice to some extent, in order to master the senses in a practice called pratyahara. So I just wanted to say that is my policy now, and we'll see where it goes. Hopefully it'll allow me to be consistent because I have a lot to say, and there's a lot to present now from many angles, but I don't want it to be regimented in a format, because I find that it comes out better when it's more spontaneous, a few bullet points, and just let it flow. So the one thing that I wanted to express here is that Jade deals with a jinn called Salos. He calls him Stalos, No, there is no stalos. There's stolas, which is toward the west. It's a whole other one. But salos means to agitate. It comes from a Greek word. It means to shake up, a shaken up situation, a disturbance. The other name is zaleos, and zali in Greek means make dizzy. So what this jinn does is basically seduces, but it doesn't seduce necessarily in a bad way. It just shakes the mind of the other person up a little bit, relieves their inhibitions, and they view you in a positive light. But it's not an illusion. They're actually penetrating biases and things like that. The rigid parts of their mind are shaken up. So every jinn appears to have a certain application, but it's only scratching the surface. Zalos is a warrior. Zaleos, or Salos, is a warrior, in the sense that this warrior shakes things up. But the shake-up is psychological, and it's not violent. Not necessarily. What the shake-up does is take away biases. It shakes up biases. It's like having a solution of something crusted, and you want to dissolve it. So you stir the water up. And then everything kind of, all the little particles fly around. And the water's in between them. So this thing shakes up these crusted forms, these biases, these thought forms, these judgments somebody may have. They may look at you and say, I don't like that person because they remind me of somebody. Well, that is a bias. And maybe you actually would like that person if you hadn't had some negative experience with somebody else that has nothing to do with them. And Zalus shakes that up a little bit so the actual likability, you might say, carries through. And this is the water element, so because Salos rides a crocodile, just like Agaris. And it has to do with being able to connect to the earth energies, but also to the water energies. And the water energies have to do with our biology, our sexual energy, our life force at a cellular biological level. Whereas the life force that we associate with breath is a more rarefied form, because it has to do with the air element. So that's what I wanted to say here. And I'll let Jay take up what he's going to take up. And after he's done, I'm going to make a few comments, basically correcting a few of the pronunciations of the runes and explaining it, because he does a little bit of a rune reading. He has a dream that has to do with some of the events that happen. And there's a few other parts, because he notices the jinn are more like gods now. They're not like normal jinn. But I would say they're like the jinn in Aladdin. They're actually, they're showing a more muscular, the male ones are more, whatever presents as masculine is more masculine and empowered, because that's what they're projecting now. They don't need to be identified with his ego persona, you might say, like Furkas was with the Clint Eastwood character from A Fistful of Dollars, or the way that was depicted, the cowboy riding on a horse or a mule or whatever he was riding. So, in that sense, the jinn are more traditional. They're able to be themselves more. And so they're bestowing gifts to Jay. And they do that because they notice, for example, what he wants and what he needs. And they're giving him what is his due. And this has to do mainly with the fact that they're supplying a kind of victory, which is to cut off the vampirism. He's not being drained, so events are falling together so he can actually also come together. So he is being healed in the natural way. It's like you take a poison, you feel like crap, you're like, oh, I feel like crap, but I can't stop taking the poison. Well, these guys just cut the poison off, and then you start getting better. So it's a no-brainer in that sense. So take it away, Jay. Just tell us your experiences, and at the end, I'm going to do just a few brief comments. All right. So what's up?
Hello, Ari. Hello, Tara. Hello, everyone else. I am not in New Mexico anymore. At least I think that's when I made the last sound bite. Now I am in Colorado. on family land with the creek running through it and having a great time. I think I left you guys with the east and west axis pretty much solidified. I think. I hope I didn't leave out a genie, but I think I had the east and west done, and it was time to move on to the south and north. And so it was Stalos. Now, lots of things happened. My stove broke. I had to leave New Mexico when I really didn't want to. I got to Colorado kind of early, but that worked out great because the weather was awesome. So basically, you're looking at a lot of effort, a lot of physical things happening. No time to relax, no time to just stare at the ground and not do anything. And that's when everything gets through, is when I have time to relax. And I didn't, so because I didn't have time, I think that may have had something to do with such a long pause with this north and south axis. But I think there's some other things as well. But we'll see. Now, the first genie in the south is Stalos, and so I summoned him and got a great feeling. Man, it was good. It was a little slightly heavy, kind of a heavy energy, but he also angelic in a way, and he matched his angel quite well. And I thought everything was good. I mean, I thought, okay, the energy's a little heavy. I'm gonna get used to it. I'm sure it'll soften up, and then we'll be good to go. Well, that's not the case. This was a long break, or just a long, not break, but just he was just taking his time, which is fine. I know I said in the last soundbite, don't worry about it, man. Just take they're taking their time. But this took a little longer than I thought. But again, I was also traveling. It was very hectic. My stove broke. Had to shop for another one. It was, it was an ordeal. But when I finally got here, I think along with summoning Stalos, and I think I summoned him before I even started traveling. Yeah. In fact, I'm sure I did. And then I also chose a new set of runes. And again, I understood the past and present, and I also understood the future too. And the future rune was victory. It's like, all right, great, but it certainly was a slow victory. Not that I'm complaining. I'm just kind of whatever. And then so I wore that the victory rune, the one that looks like an arrow pointing up, and I that was my future, wearing that around my neck. Okay, great. And but it was about 2 weeks of just nothing, and then maybe I did have some dreams, very water-oriented dreams, which I know kind of goes along with Stalos because he rides a big crocodile, and so he kind of deals with that watery kind of energy. And so anyway, then my brother and my mom and my niece got here, minus my nephew. Okay, it was a hard trip for everybody. Mom is 90, so it's going to be a hard trip for them, Texas to Colorado. So, but I got pretty. There was these vampiric elements that, of course, come along with the family, and it just so happened that I chose a different beer to drink that evening. I did not know it had a lot of alcohol in it, but it did. And so I ended up getting A little. I stopped quick enough, but I got a little more buzzed than I like. And but that happened when I was alone. It didn't happen around anybody. And so then I kind of went off in like a quick, very hard to explain, just a quick vision mode, but it wasn't vision, just a quick realization that there was some serious anger behind, behind my mom and my brother. Why do I say behind? Anyway, it was there, and it was unmistakable. And so, the whole thing, the whole thing is to like avoid vampirism and just, have a normal life and, play around with magic and have a good time. That's what I'm trying to do. And but anyway, they were just really unhappy. And so it's like, okay, maybe there was a victory won that I didn't know about. All right. Maybe not being vampired or, I don't know. All right. But I do think that I understand why Stalos was taking his time. I had some other visions later on of a familiar, maybe not, maybe a little closer tied to the genie, not really sure, but pulling things out of a bag, like a bag, like a Santa Claus bag or something like that, or maybe, I don't know, it was just like a hole in the middle of nothing or whatever. But the first thing that came out was like mosaicked. And I don't know if I'm kind of translating over from Japanese, but I think I've seen that in the editing program before. Like on a witness protection program documentary type thing, they'll blur out the guy's face. Okay, so it was mosaicked. It was like pixelated. You couldn't make out any of the detail. And that was one of the presents. So one of them, I don't know what it is yet. But the other one was like a little dog. And I know that the organ fusion and what we're doing is not, I think, a main part of the system anymore, but it is when I do it. This is a main thing with me, and it's working really well, and I'm tying in the inner smile with it, and my inner smile is connected around dogs. You're supposed to, most people will probably think of a newborn baby or something like that. I think of a 2-year-old dog, and if you ever see me in public, and I have this marred, snarled look on my face, and I'm angry about something, and then I see a dog, and my entire mood will change. And I'll be, oh, hello, little puppy. It's just completely different. It just makes me happy. So, but man, this is like working a little too good, which is great, because I feel injuries going away. There may be some other reasons for that as well, but old injuries that stayed forever, they're going away. Anyway, that's one of the gifts. The other one was a microphone. Now, because and I know Phoenix had something to do with, he had to have everything to do with this one. Because my nephew's not in the picture this summer, and I do still want to make money singing, so it's got to be just the 2-part harmony instead of the 3-part harmony with the band, because we're only a 3-member band. And so, for some reason, my singing ability has tripled. I have no idea why. I'm just like, whoa. And my brother was like, dude. And it was like, well, okay, just shut up and go make some money with it. And I think it was because a lot of it's because I'm learning how to sing over a mic, but really to triple my singing ability with no real work on a mic for a couple of months, man, this is, this is genies at work. This didn't come from me working real hard. Now, my brother has a good voice too, but it took him well over a decade to get where he's at. It took me like a couple of months when because I don't know what the hell happened, but I'm happy about it. So that was another gift. And I think it took a little while for these east and west axis kind of gifts, for lack of a better word, to happen. And I think that's why Stalos was kind of like relaxing a little bit. That's another theory. Another theory is I had a show, if you guys remember, last summer, and it was, I guess we have that story recorded. It was a great show. People loved us. It was in a small bar, but we walked out with like $500, $2 from the bar and $300 in tips. And this is a small town. You're not supposed to you're not supposed to clear that much money. But, they were just super happy, and they were just hooting and hollering and stomping, and it was a crazy party. But the attention, which doesn't bother me, it does, but only in the sense that the genies aren't working properly. When my brother, I got Stalos on one side, Gimmery on the other, who's a genie in the north, and these abilities to get attention from women are just simply being funneled over to him. And it's just way too obvious. So, I drop the ball, he picks it up, oh, wow, this is fun, and then that's okay, great. So I'm thinking maybe, and this has happened my entire life, so I'm thinking maybe that is another reason why Stalos is trying to, come in slower. And was it Gimmery's vibe that was vampired, or was it Stalos' vibe? So it's kind of hard to say. But I think in the old system, or in the old way that we were doing it, we kind of tweaked it a little bit, or Ari did, and I'm just working with it, is that Gimmery was supposed to be only in the knight position. He wasn't supposed to be... He was supposed to power the other genie, but in this system, I think, Ari, it's kind of both. You summon the genie as a familiar, along with the angel. You summon both of them, the night and the day, but you just summon them as genies, just normally, with their angels, and then they become your familiar, and then you set one in the night place and in the other in the day place, and then they get to do whatever they want. They get to operate as a knight, or as the knight position that they're supposed to be in, or they can just kind of be on their own. So I think that's the way it goes, Ari. You can take your time explaining that if you want. I hope I'm not confusing everything so much that you have to make too long of a bite to explain everything. But anyway, when Stalos finally did come through, it wasn't that big of a deal. And it doesn't have to be. It's not, but I just saw a clear vision and got that clear feeling. And it's okay, this is Stalos. Now here's another thing. The genies are looking different. They look different. They look more like gods. Stalos had long gray hair. You could tell he was older. Maybe he was a little balding on top, but he had these really cool eyebrows. And they remind me of the Majin, or Warai Hanya, or the Japanese genie that I summoned way back in the day in 2008. Just muscle bound and badass. So, and this kind of happened with Agaraz too, because he kind of showed up looking like Odin, and so they're all got this godlike feel, or muscular, big, but a lot of them feel some of them feel feminine. Phoenix felt kind of feminine for me. But then again, angels and so it's like I'm no pro at saying this feels that way and that thing feels the other way. It's like I'm just kind of guessing. I got the feeling. It's just kind of hard to explain. But anyway, so he came through and we're great. And so I ended up summoning Person. I'm kind of glancing at notes, and now I have to go off notes because I summoned Person today, or was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. But he came through yesterday because I felt him, and today. He's not quite through doing what he's doing, but he did come in with a big trident, which is kind of incorporated into his sigil, but I don't know if it's a real trident. I don't know what it represents. I know nothing about that, but he did come forward, and I think he has like I'm trying to quote this, a terrible viper in his hand or something like that. So I think what that means is like a pretty serious Kundalini flow, but it's certainly not terrible for me. And I do the 9 cuts and Om, if anybody knows what that is, and I mix it with the organ fusion stuff. So, but I'm not good at the 9 cuts, or not as good as I want to be. So I don't know if it makes any difference or not. But or I guess, well, it doesn't matter if I'm good or whatever. Who cares? So then I had a dream. This is before Person, by the way. So we're going to have to back up a little bit. I did have a dream where I actually... It was such a weird dream, but I was in the old classroom, which is, that classroom dates back to like the 70s when that thing was made. And I taught a little bit in that classroom, and then we moved to a new one. But anyway, I was going into the classroom and I had to pee, and then I went into the bathroom, but there was no toilet. And this is just a little weird, but it's like, okay, I guess I'll just pee in the sink, which I don't do, by the way, but for some reason in the dream, that's what I was going to do. But there's no sink either. So I leave the bathroom, and then I'm getting yelled at by my brother for some stupid reason. I don't even know why. And then I kind of yell back at him a little bit, and then just don't worry about him. And then he calls me an asshole as I'm walking away, and then throws my keys at me to the classroom. And for some reason, it's a little weird too. I'm naked in the dream, but that may be because a lot of the time when I'm out here in nature, I'm not around anybody, so I don't really wear clothes. It's just more comfortable. I don't have to wash them. That's kind of, convenient. So maybe that had something to do with it, but it hit me in the keys hit me in my ass, and then, and he was really angry, and I wasn't angry. I wasn't overly happy. It was more like, it's your problem, man. But said with a smile, like, whatever, something like that. And so maybe that had a little something to do with the victory rune and something I don't exactly, I have an idea what's going on. I think everybody can understand what I understand by what I'm saying, but it's like, okay, there's more to this. And so, well, all right, if you feel like saying more of what you see, then go for it. Then I chose a new set of runes. And like I said, I understand the past and the present, but I'm going to go over those real quick. Runes are here. First rune was Ingus. 2 X's, one on top of the other. And I understood that one. And the Yal tree, or Iehuaz, or something like that. And I've drawn that one before. I kind of understand that one. But then the one that kind of like, when I read up on it, and I'm like, whoa, this is a serious rune. The Dagos rune. It's like one of the The books you sent me, Ari, it's like the breakthrough rune. It's like a X on its side, or maybe like a sideways hourglass. And so anyway, I read that one and I'm like going, well, that one looks pretty serious. Does look like what I'm doing. So there you go, guys. Okay. That's all I got to say. Dr. J out.
All right, so let's get to it. Thanks for the exposition, Jay. You've mentioned a lot of things, and there's a lot of ground to cover. And we're going to do it concisely this time. Now, you say there was a long time between when you first tried to summon Salos and until he started manifesting and showing his nature and all the results, so to speak. Now, all of your theories are correct in my honest opinion. I have nothing against them. I would like to add one more thing. Since you are dealing with the south direction, the south actually presents the stabilization axis, or the first part of it. So the south-north axis stabilizes, the east-west axis is the axis of the Earth's rotation. And symbolically, that is the passage of time. This is events, it's energetic. Without the north-south axis, it's kind of erratic. It's all over the place. Things can't really become coherent because they don't have a reference frame around which to become coherent. Well, now you place the first step for that reference frame. And it's drawing the influences of East and West, and that takes time. Because now that it can draw the influences of East and West, it can start dealing with the vampirism. And the vampirism isn't dealt with through blocking anything. There isn't any specific thing, aside from Halfas. The power of Halfas, for example, would do that, would protect you. Because the other Jinn of the West, Phoenix, is a Jinn of inspiration. And you notice your voice getting better. And there are physiological reasons for that. And there are psychological and psychic reasons for that. But it all comes down to the causality of the Jinn. So as Phoenix provides its thing, normally what would have happened was it would have been siphoned off. It would have been interfered with. And you would have felt yourself even worse, more drained, because any kind... See, that's the problem with this kind of vampirism, is anytime you present your own creativity, your own talent, your own ability, it gets taken from you and leaves you worse off than before. So then why bother? Not only why bother, but you end up being drained. And that's what the parasite wants. Hey man, keep going, you know, you're just feeding me. So Halfas stopped the feeding in that sense. It interfered at the western position where you might say your deeper subconscious lies, where your resourcefulness lies, because the west is where the harvest occurs. It's the end of the day. It's after you've gained a lot of all the experience of the day, and finally, at the end of the day, you have it all in front of you. And this is where your gifts are. So the West is giving you gifts, and as it gives you gifts, then the South can come in and say, okay, we've now calibrated the situation, so we're ready for the stabilization axis, which will become, you'll notice it becomes more prominent, more clear as you move through the north direction. So yeah, the vampires are mad. The victory is that you have gained the victory not over the vampires because you defeated them, but over the vampirism, because you've established the situation where the energy is moving in such a way that you've been finally led to events to take care of it in certain ways, because Jay is dealing with a few health issues in the way that is actually working for him. And that's creating far more effects than normally, than if he would have just done that logically, mechanically, without the esoteric aspect. Interestingly, I have a little anecdote here. I have another friend online who does summon spirits in a kind of ad hoc shamanic manner, very spontaneous, but he has positive results without really getting into any kind of procedure. Of course, these results can be even more positive if he does get into some kind of procedure, but in this case, he had some health issues, and his intuition or deeper self was like advising him, or the spirits, you need to take some kind of supplement that's a natural product, some herb. It wasn't ashwagandha, but something similar, some Himalayan herb. And then he noticed that the thing was like a really small dose, and the extract wasn't working for him. He seemed to have some kind of side effect. So he felt like, okay, let's just tune into not the spirit of the herb, but the spirit of the mountain from where the herb allegedly came, somewhere in the Himalayas. So he had a vision of a face like over a rock cliff, and this was like talking to him. And of course the listener might be like, who are these people you deal with, man? Fucking, they keep having visions and seeing things and talking to things, and we're not like that. Well, you learn to tune in. These visions may be very abstract, and if you're the type of person that says, immediately discards it before you let it precipitate into something, that's just a stray thought. Well, the stray thought, if you focus on it in a relaxed manner and give it a chance, might precipitate into a visionary experience. And the visionary experience is just representative. Sometimes it's not a vision like a full-blown, it's not a hallucination. It's almost like you're thinking you're seeing something. But for some people, it's a real vision, like a eidetic memory, picture perfect memory, or when you go to the hypnagogic state, when you fall asleep, right before you fall asleep, you start seeing things like a pre-dream state or something like that. So it varies, but we tend to discard it, only my imagination, and it doesn't have time to just settle down and do what it's meant to do. It's just one way that humans think or engage with thought forms that are not necessarily generated by their own ego or immediate individualized psyche. Things are a little deeper than that. It's a simplification to say, oh, the Spirit's talking to you, but it's an actual accurate simplification, you might say. So that being said, my other friend talked to this Spirit, and the Spirit came through, and it was a definite experience of energy, and infused the, shall we say, called him, oh, young shaman, here. And he's not like, he's almost 40, but the Spirit infused the supplement with its own essence. So it tied the supplement to its quote-unquote proverbial roots, no pun intended, on the mountain where it came from, and the earth and everything else. So the causality of the chemistry was far more effective, and he was instant pain's gone, instant this, way more stuff. Oh, it's a placebo effect. Well, everything's a placebo effect. And if placebo effects are true, then, you better well take advantage of it. But the placebo part is that his mind tuned into something. So that something to him was real because it is real, it's perception. You don't just imagine these perceptions because imagination is not that powerful unless you're psychotic, and you don't get these benefits if you're psychotic. Then it's a good psychosis. But the point is that Jay also has these sensitivities, and these sensitivities are working the situation. Not just his own sensitivities, but what he's interacting with. So he needs an acclimation time. He's calibrating his own dynamic, and so it's a big deal to finally be able to block the vampirism. And notice in his account, he could sense that they're angry, but they can't express that anger. Of course not. What are you going to do? Hey, man, I notice you stopped being a sucker or a victim. Come on. We want to feed. What's the matter with you? Your own relatives telling you that, you'd be running away screaming. So, and he saw this in the dream as well. He got the keys thrown at him, the keys to the kingdom, the keys to the classroom, because they had a family business where they had a school. And so to earn your money, you need to teach. This isn't about learning the wisdom or, because the teacher has authority. The teacher has power. The teacher makes a living off of that, off of the conveyance. of information or wisdom or whatever, So he goes to the classroom and does what he needs to do. And instead of his brother coming in with him and partaking, he just threw him the keys. Okay, if you're not going to feed me, then just, whatever, you asshole, who cares? And throwing a tantrum, you might say, or getting all grumpy about it. But it is what it is, and Jay understood that deep down. So the victory is that. And some people refrain from being liberated from what's oppressing them inside and out because they're going to lose maybe some friends, but these aren't real friends. Or their life is going to change, and some people will be unhappy because the status quo seems to serve them. Parasites are always unhappy when you try to expel them, and they do resist. I mean, it's well known. You can be on a diet of carbs, and the parasites love carbs. So if you go on a carnivore diet or some other kind of diet that has nothing to do with carbs, then the parasites, you'll have these adverse symptoms that are the parasites themselves protesting, you might say, physiologically, biochemically. So let's move on here. The gifts that he saw in the vision were three. So you had this blurry gift, which is exactly that. This is the gift that his own consciousness either could not formulate or shouldn't formulate, because it has to do with the direct addressing of the vampirism. It's like, dude, you don't need to know this because your mind is going to start beaming it out and communicating it, and these parasitic influences, not saying the people behind it, but whatever the influences are, if your mind somehow grasps it and rationalizes it, then contingency plans can be done. And against you, counterattacks, counter whatever effects. So it's best to keep it vague. And that's why this kind of summoning dynamic helps, because it's not, your ego doesn't participate in everything. And it doesn't participate where it doesn't need to, especially. So that's one thing. The next thing was the puppy, and this is also the appreciation of the deeper self. When you get drained and toxified by whatever other people or other things don't want to face anymore, here, take my trash, my waste, my toxin, and give me all the good life and health and fortune and good ideas and creativity and everything that makes you empowered. Give it to me, and I'll give you everything that sucks about me. And so what happens is you get depressed. You don't experience, life sucks. You get, maybe angry, maybe you get bitter. All of these things are countered. In terms of practice, the inner smile helps. And Jay said, when I think of puppies or little dogs, that's what makes me smile. It changes the mood. So here is a puppy, the effect of being liberated, hopefully permanently, but we'll see how it goes, from this vampiric dynamic, the effect of Salos actually being able to shake up the sensibilities of crusted perceptions of other people in order for your truth to come through. Because, if you're a bitter person and you use Salos, you will have to do something, experience it in a negative way, or you will have to seduce somebody. It'll be a lie. Seduction is a form of deception, usually. And this isn't. So if you have a genuine nature, then this genuine nature will come through, and with all of the disruptions, it will actually conduct, and your relationships will become more what they should be. I'm not idealizing the Jinn effects. I'm saying that the effect of the Jinn depends on how you apply them, why you apply them, and who you are that applies them. So if you have a pure heart, yes, you can, but nobody has a pure heart. But at least if you're sincere and you're honest with yourself and you're willing to go through whatever you need to go through to clean yourself up in a certain way, to filter out the toxins, the psychological, psychic toxins, to be able to find your center, your balance, your sense of grounding, all of these things, so the real truth of you, the genuine truth that's healthy, because health is a potential within unhealth. It isn't gone. You reclaim health because it's still there, esoterically speaking at least. The potential is still there. In ancient Greek lore, they used to say that, I think Plato said that somewhere, that all revelation is a form of memory. You remember something, that something deep down, everything exists already within you. So you're remembering something. And it may not have to do with this life or any life. Something in your essence, and you bring it up, and it's a revelation now that you can bring into your manifest life. Similarly, all of these talents that the Jinn bring up are something that they trigger from within you, so they align with you. And everybody who is not purposely aligned with being deceptive, being hateful, being destructive, being hurtful, getting joy, so to speak, out of causing suffering, or getting a power trip. Sometimes we do it out of bitterness, but some people are into that. That's who they are. There's nothing that can change them. But we need, in my honest opinion, to assume, even though it makes an ass out of you and me, as they say, we need to assume that most people are not like that. And the ones that appear like that are corrupted or twisted or living in an unhealthy state. And they can revert back to a more natural state. The natural state is the benign one. It's a very cynical view to think that your natural state is psychopathy because that's somehow survival. No, that's the psychopathic philosophy that somehow has become the norm. Excuse any background noise. It's unavoidable this time, but it's not that much. It's okay. Anyways, the other gift was the mic. And so as Jay's heart can actually open up a little bit, not in any romantic sense or whatever, but in the sense of just, I can feel alive again. I can breathe again. The mic is basically the voice coming out. And that symbolizes expression, but the fact that his singing voice actually has improved without any effort is twofold. He's kind of looking after his health now, and that's bringing it about. So it's not just a miraculous energetic influence from the Jinn or their angels or whatever. It's also that the event, finally he's moving to take action in the physical plane that has a direct result. Why didn't he take that action before? Well, because you can't think clearly when you're under parasitic influence. You are hypnotized. You're just going to do whatever the parasite wants. This is subconscious. It doesn't mean, though, that all change is a physical effect. Just like it doesn't mean that all change is a magical effect or a psychic effect. What matters is the change. You really don't care how it happens as long as it doesn't cause more suffering and as long as it's meaningful for you. Especially if you're a pragmatic individual who would like to believe in all the magic and stuff, but really prefers to believe in whatever they can see. So Jay believes in both. And it's not a matter of faith, it's a matter of experience. He's seen these effects. But at the same time, we need to know that when an esoteric or spiritual influence affects a situation, they affect causality. And causality expresses through the path of least resistance. So if all it needs is for you to go to the pharmacy and take something that you hadn't even heard of before, or that you've heard of and for some reason, or for a friend to recommend something to you, so be it. It actually takes more energy sometimes for the effect to be directly psychic. Other times it doesn't. Now, the next thing is that Jay asked about the night versus day stuff and how do we do it. Normally in this system, what you would do is do the day Jinn, which establishes whatever you need to do, the change that it makes. So Salos now is the day Jinn. So Salos is what is going on. Salos is what Jay is absorbing, the pattern. So he's absorbing the ability to be charismatic, shall we say, to disrupt biases so his true light can shine through. But this isn't good enough because it needs to open the portal. And the portal in this case is, which is it? Is it the Empress? I think so. I'm not sure. But the portal in this case, whatever it is supported by 2 Jinn. And it needs the power of the night Jinn. And in this, because the power of the night Jinn doesn't just mobilize the day Jinn's pattern, it also qualifies it. So person is a kind of energy body Jinn. It bestows a kind of energy body, an aerial body that allows the life force to circulate, allows your perception to expand, allows you to connect to manifestation at a level of chi presence, of breath energy presence. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means you're buzzing. That means you can extend your attention in such a way and influence events through this life force. It also means improvement in health. It also means increased intuition. You're more grounded as far as your intuition goes. Otherwise, without this breath energy, it doesn't really connect to the body. And then deeper with the water cellular energy, the biological energy, in the more chemically based energy or sexual energy, that brings it into greater coherence even. And then it connects directly to the physical body, to your physiology, to your anatomical qualities, etc. And it becomes a reality in your life far more structured than otherwise would be. So you do the day Jinn normally because the Jinn bestows a pattern. And then you focus on the energy of the night Jinn, the energy body. What is person? Person is the framework that is going to boost the pattern of what Salos does. So because this is difficult to kind of understand in theory, you would have to do the practice to get it a few times. You just summon them as usual with their angels and everything. And then once you can get their presence without going through the conversion process of turning them into familiars, they're immediately familiars. And familiars means in human likeness, in a sense where you can relate to it. They're not abstractions, they're not a bunch of symbols, they're not chimeras, they're not monstrosities. All of those things kind of go by the wayside, so you're aligned with the essence that's most in tune with you. And then you can say, okay, day Jinn, you're the pattern. Person is the night Jinn, you're the strength and the force. Now I can combine the two. Now I can get a sense of what the two would be like together. It gives you a way to put them together. Otherwise, they'd be just mix and match. So no, Jay, they don't do their own thing. There is a specific reason for one being the day Jinn and one being the night Jinn. And that is the quality you seek to evoke. And this quality supports the opening of the portal, which is a form of empowerment. The portal is a portal of possibility. It's a portal of possibility of relating to the world. So the south direction represents the equator of the earth. It represents, because we're looking at the earth as a hemisphere in this sense. North is the pole, south is the equator. It doesn't matter which hemisphere you're on. And the pole represents where the axis goes through, and the equator represents the expanse of the earth, the greatest circumference of the earth where everything happens. So both of these are your presence. And the south also represents the summertime and noonday. In astrology, the south direction would be the midheaven, the position right above your head, where from that position you have the broadest viewpoint. So it's associated with career, because the career, what does this person do with their life? It's the broadest view you can have of a person, to categorize them. It's not their personal life, their quirks, their qualities. It's what is the big impact that this person has had on the world. So in this case, the south direction gives you your full scope of potential. And this full scope of potential is the power that this direction bestows for your grounding and your stabilization. And it's giving you these gifts as an expression from the West direction, as soon as you're able to absorb the gifts, then the South direction comes in and says, okay, now you're able to release the biases of people when they perceive you. So your natural charisma can come through. Well, what if I don't have natural charisma? Well, everybody does, really. In some way, everybody does. If you have a dark side, you have a bright side. And the dark side, the shadow, is just the outline of your limitations, of where you go and don't want to cross a line because that doesn't represent you. That's not who you are. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. Wherever you do cross that line, you suffer. So you withdraw. And the shadow, proverbial shadow, is the definition of between us and what is not us. What can make us truly happy and what does not make us happy, even though we may think it does. So the shadow is important. And our responses are not the shadow per se. The shadow isn't supposed to be evil or have anything. The shadow is essentially where we are disconnected from ourselves because we are individuals. It's our limits. And these limits can be oppressive sometimes. And that's why we are more than the shadow. But the shadow defines the light, as they say. The shadow defines who we are, and it's a containment. So whatever we don't like about ourselves is the flip side of our very identity that's able to relate to whatever we do like about ourselves and the world. Without it, there would be no relationship because everything would just be a mishmash. We wouldn't know where we stop and where something else begins. Sometimes that's a good thing, but we need to have the choice. So if you're a creative person and you enjoy what you're doing, then that creativity shines through and people appreciate it. It fuels them. And because they appreciate it, it shines back to you. So there's no loss of energy, there's no parasitism, and everybody gets nourished by the experience because it's circulation. Nobody's dumping. That's the problem with vampirism. It isn't the taking of energy. It's the fact that when the energy is taken, nothing's given back, except for the negative. I don't like this, so I'm not dealing with it. I'm not taking responsibility. You take responsibility. But when you're doing that, what happens when the other person decides to take responsibility for your issues, as if they were their own? They resolve them. Then you come around, or the vampire comes around and goes, oh, you fixed it. Give it back. Sorry, man, it's not yours anymore. I fixed it. My resources and everything went into healing this. And I had to go through the pain of, of this trauma, even though I never experienced the trauma, just the depression that came from having my essence sucked out and left with this. And now I regenerated my essence and it's fucking a talent. It's a talent now. It's not a negativity. Everything can be turned around. It's not that easy. Maybe it seems impossible, but there may be ways to do it. And we are exploring one such option. So the night versus day thing, it's whatever works easiest for Jay, for example. And if Jay can do it, it's something others can do as well. But the point is, whether you want to summon these guys, shall we say, as they are, to see what they are and explore them, that's fine. But when you're opening a portal, you have these two pillars, the day and the night pillar. And specifically, for these things to activate and give you these gifts in this term, without having to pay any prices or whatever, because Pursan, essentially its qualities are whatever the qualities of the energy body are. You already have them. Pursan isn't that difficult. Pursan will give you knowledge of the past, present, and future because your intuition is enhanced, whether you use runes or not. And Jay is getting that. So, well, he had it before. Well, now it's enhanced. And past, present, and future is also an ability that's spread over many Jinn. But in this case, Pursan has it very acute. It's almost one of the few abilities it has. And then this aerial body, which is the shining body, which is the energy body. It's the aura. So it gives you charisma in your aura. The aura is the charisma is empowered by the energy of the aura. So you're shining. You got this big halo around you, and everybody is positively affected by your presence. That's a cool thing to have. And whenever he has it, the vampire would just siphon it off or inhibit it. Basically, you got to hurt somebody psychically to do that. You don't just suck off the energy. You're basically going into somebody's subconscious and shutting their heart down and threatening on some level, at a very, very primal level, and that the person isn't even aware how this is done or in what way and why they're responding that way, but it's a knee-jerk reaction. Because it's far safer to just go along with getting bled because you don't have any options. You don't see them. But here you do. And hence, the puppy is a gift. Because the puppy is a way to show that here is my inner worth. And now this inner worth can come out and Salos will help it conduct through. The Jinn don't do things. They help you do things, at least in this system. And that's why they have these angelic supports to make sure that everything is coherent and sacred, shall we say. We're not doing fallen angel stuff. We're not doing hateful stuff. We're not doing subversive stuff. We are doing something. The difference is, well, why not let the angels just do everything? Because their level of presence is not grounded by their nature. They're meant to inspire you to do it. But the Jinn have a far more grounded nature and inspire you on a far more deeper level and enter your subconscious far more naturally. That's why they seem to be able to have all these powers, because they harness the so-called frequency level that's equivalent to the human subconscious. And in that way, you are integrating yourself and harnessing yourself. You don't need Jinn to do anything for you. You don't need angels to do anything for you. These beings are catalysts that activate you and help you address the issues in your life that are so-called karmic, that inhibit you from being who you truly are. So someone would say, well, that's a new agey type. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't carry the baggage of that new agey level. What it is a way to get rid of all the misunderstandings that are self-fulfilling prophecies here. You have Ouija boards. If you have a Ouija board and you're an unbalanced emotionally individual and you access your intuition through that, you can have a whole bunch of stuff infect you that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, especially if everybody tells you, you're going to get possessed, you're going to get possessed. And maybe if you're a teenage girl, you might want to be possessed on some weird level. Or it's an excuse to just vent repressed stuff. But so many people do that, and this doesn't happen anymore because that myth has kind of been dispelled. You don't have people getting possessed with Ouija boards. You don't have people getting possessed with runes. You don't have people getting possessed with tarot cards. It's because you are not subject to, just opening yourself up and inviting something in by your very biases. So biases come into play in this podcast a little bit. Now, Jay had a dream where the Jinn, he says, Salos presented himself with a trident. Yeah, these Jinn are not gods per se, but they are related in quality, in persona, in energy. They're related to these beings that we call gods. Now, I'm not going to get into that. There is a specific identity, and you don't have to, if religions weren't so biased to demonize that, why is it demonized? Well, here's a hint. If you take whatever the angel is, and whatever the Jinn is, and whatever the God is, with a small g, and you realize what they are in relation to each other and connect the dots, you have a key to empowerment and revelation and understanding. This is a very deep key because all of these things coming together align with our own human nature. I'm not going to say anything more. It's a topic for another conversation. Suffice it to say that, as I said in the prologue, Jay is able to connect with these guys now as they were meant to be connected, because he had an experience with Ma Jinn, the Japanese style Jinn, and other types that were like this. They came like in these heavy masculine, and it was almost like he was violated because he had certain spinal energies come through and stuff like that, and interpreted it, oh, my rectum is feeling energy, I must be violated. Well, it wasn't just that. It was the fact that there were other things in the subconscious that qualified these experiences in a way that they didn't need to be, that was adverse. So right now, Jay, you're able to reapproach the true Jinn power in a way that's not going to violate you, in a way that you can harness it. So you don't have to water it down or conform it. So you can have familiars that are truly empowered Jinn. The vision of the Jinn, like Aladdin, like this big smoky being coming out of the lamp, that's actually how they experienced them. They were grand beings. They were, imposing, majestic. But at the same time, if you have incoherence in your own being, if you're not tuned, you might say, you don't have to be holy. That's what they used to say. You have to be holy and God and this and that. Well, yes, you have to be healthy, mentally, psychologically, to a certain degree, which means dealing with issues that keep you from being yourself, or the self that you would want to be, the self that you're meant to be, so to speak, your natural, healthy self, psychically, psychologically, spiritually, physically, psychophysically. And you don't have to be that per se, we're all human here, but you're oriented toward that. And there's a difference, from being oriented toward that, where everything is aligned to bring you in that direction. So every day is almost like, even if it seems like 5 steps back, 1 step forward, or many steps back, or every step is backwards, you're still taking care of stuff in order to eventually, at some point, move you forward in a way that you'll be conscious of. So the trident represents the same thing that, let's go to the god Shiva here. Shiva has a trident. Why? Because the feminine energy known as Shakti, a word that means force, the force, Star Wars, the force has 3 qualities. The first one is wisdom, gnosis, knowledge, you might say. The first one is the ability to reveal, to know, to perceive. It's the energy of your true perception. Then you have will. And then the third quality is action. It is what compels action. It moves action. It's the force. So these 3 qualities are synthesized, come into synthesis as one, and that's what the trident represents in that zone. It conveys a power that can either be one or the other thing, like either, you can apply it to knowledge, or with your will, your true will, or through direct action. Or it can have combinations of all of these. And Salos was also carrying a viper. Now this isn't, we can veer off from the term Kundalini, where it doesn't have to be just Kundalini. The serpents represent magical force, let's put it that way. They represent the force that moves through and actualizes your intentions, your desires, causality, the force of causality. So let's be a little more abstract here, because he carries it in his hand. It doesn't go up his butt. It's not like Asmodee appears with a dragon's tail, which also has that, but it's the tail goes into the body directly. So in this case, the trident represents this force, but the serpents also represent the force. Just like when you see images of the god Shiva, the Indian god Shiva, you see the god is in a lotus posture or whatever, but in a lot of these images, he's intertwined with serpents. That means energies are flowing through the body. So Salos does trigger these energetic effects, this life force that connects to the water element, it connects to the earth element because of the crocodile, but it also connects to the air element, not through some bird on his wrist like Agares, which is a mind connection, but through the power of Person in this case, through the life force of the energy body that's related to the air element in this case. So Then Jay goes and does the rune reading. He had done one before, and now he does his final one. That's the one I'm going to talk about. And the first rune is Ingaz, which is the rune of the god Ing, who is Frey, the male fertility god. And that's the past. And that's a rune of incubation and containment. So he was containing the situation and digesting it. This is as far as I would see it. The next rune, Haiwaz, is the axis. So you have a containment dynamic, then you have a stabilizing dynamic. He is now stabilizing the axis. This all has to do with his process here. So he's asking about that. And even if he isn't, that's the theme. So the next room now in this is why, with all the delays and everything it's like, well, you're stabilizing everything. You're creating that axis of presence where your power can flow through unhindered without crises or setbacks. And so the final rune, the future rune, is Dagaz. It is the rune of the day. It is actually a rune of twilight because it moves from the sunrise, from the night to the day is the sunrise effect. And that's the little dot in the middle. Essentially, this rune looks like a bow tie. So the bow tie has two triangles that meet at the point. And that point is the point of transition. It's almost like an angular infinity sign. So at the midpoint, he's going through a transition. Things will change. A new day will dawn. And you're going through a transition now that will bring you into a kind of new dynamic. So that's a wrap. We've expressed everything that he's doing. He had this dream. He's taking his power back, and it's all stabilizing. So again, it's all good. That's why I didn't interject in the dialogue to try to clarify and all of this right after he asked the question. Well, Jay, thanks for your exposition. And you guys, like I said, check out that video when it comes up on my Magus Wisdom Now channel. And subscribe if you like the material. But it's going to be like this. It's not a podcast, but I won't be doing, shall we say, unless there's something to show that needs to be shown. And we're going to talk about stuff that's off the beaten track. This yoga is not quite off the beaten track, but the video right now about sensory mastery is. And it's a practice that you won't find anywhere. Some of you might take to it, some of you might not. Maybe most of them might not. It's an advanced practice, but I've attempted to simplify it. If you can work through it in stages, and the video is like 27 minutes, 25 minutes long. So it's not really that. And a portion of it is the practice, but there's a lot of theory around it. And I had to have 2 videos before that to really explain it. So I wanted to add that too. And my information, my written information, is also going to go off. We're going to be dealing with the nature of mystical experience, with the nature of divinity, with the nature of revelation, and what's really going on in existence. What is the core issue here? Why are we how we are? And I'm going to use some religious symbolism and maybe other symbolism, but the point is to why are we how we are and what we can do about it. And this is all unassuming, so I'm not claiming any grand authority, and I shouldn't. What I am hoping or proposing is that if you have a sense of intuitive understanding in any shape or form, even if you aren't aware of it, but somehow this clicks with you, then you have an opportunity. That's all I'm going to say. So, do with it as you will, because on my end, I'm ensuring that there ain't going to be no information that's harmful or even iffy or that can lead to imbalance, because I've had experiences like that before. Something very innocent was taken the wrong way. And in this case, if you're not meant to do it, it simply won't work for you. However, you may be meant to do it and it still won't work for you because you just need to persist. People usually have adverse esoteric experiences because they push too hard in the wrong way and lack the patience to take things one step at a time, and every step you take is a thorough step. You have covered the ground completely. You have not just stepped over it, you've felt it with your hands, you've sniffed it, you've tasted it, you've really covered the ground, and you've owned it. And once you do that, then you're not forcing a situation that is going to have most of your subconscious at odds with you. When that happens, that's when you have a crisis. You can't handle it because a part of you doesn't want to handle it. And most of that is, I wouldn't call it a misunderstanding, but it's simply not brought into where the rest of you should be. It's not brought into your conscious self. It's kept in a place that's under the influence of trauma, that's under the influence of a whole bunch of things. Programming. So all of this needs to be dismantled in a way that it doesn't have to be painful, in other words. And it doesn't have to take you millions of years or even many years. It can take months to reach a point where you actually notice a viable improvement, as long as you're not so impatient to just bypass the improvement process and just be at the top, or I want a real miracle. Yeah, if a miracle hit you over the head and you're not ready for it, it's going to seem like a bad thing, or something you really don't care about. It's like when you're you want the great relationship, but every time it comes along, you kind of either ignore it or it doesn't do it for you, and you go right back to the relationship that hurts you. Why? Because you want to deal with something. And the relationship that hurts you, if you can take care of it, if you can heal that thing, then you've healed it. It's better, in some sense, your deeper subconscious thinks, if I can make somebody love me who really doesn't, then I can probably love myself. If I can fix a relationship that keeps going around the same crap over and over again, which is in me, but if I go to a relationship that's already okay, this problematic dynamic never gets addressed. It's there and it's calling and it's constantly whimpering and crying, and yet this other perfect thing. So, you might as well just take your lot in life and ignore it and go for whatever the good thing is. Something inside of us knows that it's not good enough, and that's why it keeps us on this treadmill of crap. But there is a way to digest the crap, because basically you separate it from the real crap that's not something you really need to deal with, which has to do with hatred. The vampire, for example, with Jay, would take these patterns, copy them, but make sure Jay doesn't have them. That's the key. It's not that somebody else is being nourished by Jay's energy. It's the fact that somebody doesn't like Jay's energy, Jay to have his energy, because it reminds them that they can't muster the same thing. So they want it gone. And then they can just copy it. They can't copy it alone because this thing goes back, no, I belong to Jay. I have his signature. Nope, not anymore. He's fucked. He's got, he's dealing with my self-hatred. And the thing is that, deal with somebody else's self-hatred. If you don't have self-hatred, then it can't stick. So sometimes the crap that somebody else dumps on us reminds us of whatever we haven't accessed yet that we need to deal with. Maybe prematurely, maybe a little too harshly, but it gets us off our ass. And one of the first things that not the first things, but down the line, we can actually have a choice and say, no, I've taken responsibility. I'm dealing with everything on my terms, but I am dealing with it, so I don't need to face it that way. I don't need to be slammed and drained, excuse me, and made sick. So we take responsibility and we make choices. Not because we have to or we're forced to or because it's fate or destiny, but because it's the best solution. If we want to be fulfilled, taking responsibility on our terms is the best solution. And I will leave you with that. So thanks, Jay, again. Looking forward to your next exposition. Hopefully this will involve the north aspect so we can create that axis of stabilization. and see how it affects, and you will have all of the 8 Jinn. And then we can talk about the portals themselves and what it means to open up these portals all at once. So, till next time, Magus out.